Comrades, it's time to celebrate, because HROT is finally finished. Cue the montage. HROT is one of the more fascinating throwback shooters out there. The game, of course, takes heavy inspiration from classic 90s first-person shooters, in particular Quake and Chasm the Rift. But what makes it unique is that it takes place in an alternate 1986 Soviet-controlled Czechoslovakia, specifically within its capital city of Prague. I've been covering HROT since it entered early access back in 2021, and I've been singing its praises so far, loving its tight, challenging gameplay, sharp, inventive level design, and sense of humor, with a few critiques here and there. Now, with the release of HROT's third episode, titled The Gastroscopy, the game has finally graduated from early access into full release. In this video, I will give my final overall thoughts with an emphasis on what Episode 3 brings to the table. But before we begin, a big thank you to the developer for originally providing the review code. Alrighty, let's slurp down some stroganoff and start lobbing those grenades. HROT is comprised of 3 distinct episodes, each featuring around 8 levels, with some secret ones thrown in to spice things up. The setup is that a mysterious disaster has taken place, poisoning the land and infesting it with strange creatures and sickly soldiers, an inciting incident likely meant to parallel the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. You play as a survivor of this catastrophe, rampaging through this brown urban nightmare to save your homeland. Beyond that, HROT doesn't feature much of a plot. The story is left up to player interpretation, and in truth, the goal is to immerse them in its creepy atmosphere and artistically convey the feelings of what it was like to live in the Czech Republic at this time. HROT's pixels and polygons are indeed a loving tribute to mid-90s first-person shooters, faithfully recreating their style. But really, at its core, it's a heavy satire of the Soviet period of Czech history, with the FPS gameplay meant to facilitate its cynical and absurd humor. At the same time, though, it's a love letter to Czech culture, overflowing with references to it, many of which went right over my head until they were pointed out in my comments from my viewers living in the region. In fact, just about every level in HROT is based on a real location in Prague and its surrounding countryside. The historical context and how it's presented adds a dimension to this game that I feel sets it apart from other throwback shooters, giving it a personality that is nostalgic in all senses of the word. HROT's visuals are far from aesthetically pleasing, and purposely so. As it is a throwback shooter, the graphics emulate the crunchy, blocky, and wiggly rendering of 3D mid-90s shooters. It's convincingly retro. As I said in my first review, if I had no prior knowledge of this game, I would have believed it was made in something like the original Quake engine. Even more impressive, HROT actually uses a custom engine built by its solo developer. Nope, this ain't Unity. This tech is wholly unique and fine-tuned for old-school action. The entirety of HROT is rendered with a sepia color tone, brown, beige, and lighter shades of red. It's meant to represent the oppressive atmosphere of this time, while also channeling the brownness of the classic shooters that inspired it. And I would say it's also a nod to Soviet-era cinema. Playing it, I couldn't help but be reminded of Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker, which features a similar color palette in parts. I do think the artistic direction serves this game well. The bummer though is that it makes everything feel pretty samey, and kinda causes all the levels to blur together. Episode 2 alleviated this a bit, with the setting going from Prague's urban areas to its medieval countryside. Still very brown, but the castle aesthetic was a refreshing switch up. But Episode 3 returns to the familiar urban areas of the first, and many of the previous environmental assets have been recycled, making Episode 3 devoid of a distinct identity. I'm not saying it's bad, and it certainly has the personality that has come to define this game. I just wish it felt more distinct. One thing I didn't love were the animations for enemies. Even for a retro throwback, I think they animate too simplistically and jankily, with some enemies just flopping on the ground upon death, and worse, suddenly springing into attack animations that can cheaply catch the player off guard. However, regardless of my feelings on the color palette and animation, I can't deny that HROT creates a thick, unnerving, and captivating atmosphere. You truly feel like you are traveling through a poisoned, rusty, radioactive land, with the sky sky full of smog and the occasional enemy evacuating their lunch. Life and brightness simply feel impossible here. One thing I love about this game is that it's not afraid to let things be quiet and suspenseful, building up the tension and then pulling the rug out from under the player's feet. HROT revels in surprising and spooking the player, while also weirding them out with all sorts of random stuff. Okie dokie then. A big part of this game's spooky, oppressive feel is the music. Composed by Shellos, who also worked on the music for Hotline Miami 2, HROT's score I would say is a tribute to Trent Reznor's legendary Quake soundtrack, and it's a perfect fit for HROT's sensibilities. The music sounds how this game looks: industrial, rusty, radioactive, and sickly, with solid beats to hype you up for the action. A common complaint I've seen for this game is that the weapons don't sound great, with many players wanting more booming, powerful firing sounds. In truth, I've never been all that bothered by this, but I can see where people are coming from, especially with the pistol and submachine gun sounding pretty dinky. Yeah, it would have been nice if these had a little more oomph. While it does have its rough edges, HROT's presentation is a fine example of how a game's visuals and audio can be a nostalgic throwback and still have a wholly unique personality all their own. Ew. Mechanically, HROT has been and still is on point. The shooting feels solid and movement is blisteringly fast and responsive. Basically, it's silky smooth and hits like a sledgehammer, which is what you want from this sort of game. Maybe the better metaphor is to say it slices like a sickle and hits like a hammer. HROT is a shooter that wants players to be scrappy. Every battle has some degree of desperation to it, and the player will be punished for even the tiniest mistake. This is 100% the type of shooter that will give you a weapon, a little bit of ammo, and a mob of powerful enemies, and goes, figure it out. Enemy attacks are relentless. As soon as you see a baddie, it's likely they're already firing at you. You are just fast enough to dodge projectiles, and projectile patterns switch up between enemies, just to trip up players who might be getting too comfortable with circle strafing. Typically, there's just enough ammo to get you through battles, but being wasteful with weapons is likely to get you into some pickles. Yeah, HROT's a tough game, a real desk pounder if you catch my drift, but the challenge is what makes it exhilarating. And it's a fair challenge for the most part, but there are some enemies that can be bullshit. My least favorite enemy in the game was the infested rider, or the wheelchair guy. On top of being hard to kill, he fires a volley of devastating projectiles that are not only silent, but can be hard to see as they are beige and blend into the background. These guys caught me off guard so many times and I groaned every time they spawned in. I wasn't crazy about the new enemy introduced in episode 3 either, the pathologist, who can soak up a lot of damage and chucks knives at you. They feel like a variant of the big grenade throwers, and I didn't feel they added all that much to the gameplay other than being a source to waste my ammo on, as they are stupidly spongy. HROT's arsenal is solid with the expected variety of rapid-fire spread, explosive, and BFG damage types. For me though, the arsenal was all about the shells and booms. Being the two weapons I preferred was the double-barrel shotgun and the grenade launcher, and by extension the normal grenades that it uses for ammo. Side note, I still love that throwing grenades is mapped to the right click. HROT's enemies are on the spongy side, and being able to splatter them with a few shotgun blasts or a well-placed grenade is far more preferable to whittling them down with the pistols or submachine gun. Besides those two, my other favorite was the crossbow. It fires slow and requires some accuracy, but this sucker can take out many of the enemies in just a few shots, and will make you feel slick using it. One of my criticisms of episode 2 was the introduction of the wine, which restores 10 points of your health every sip. My issue is that there were too many wine pickups, and it was way too easy for players to take advantage of it. And I felt like there needed to be more of a trade-off or penalty for using it, other than just a little wobbly drunk effect. The wine returns in episode 3, but this time around the pickups for it are few and far between, becoming an item that is best used when you absolutely need it and not a go-to crutch for getting through tougher battles. Level design is one of HROT's strongest qualities. All maps are designed to be tight, efficient, and have a nice, speedy flow. Maze-like enough to keep navigation interesting, but never leaving me confused or lost. They're all designed to loop on themselves with clever shortcuts built in to get you right back to where you need to be after completing an objective. And the way secrets are laced into these maps is masterful. Many of them have a big focus on clever gameplay devices to add to the challenge or flat out amuse the player. As I said earlier, this game is always trying to surprise you. Every room has the possibility of ambush, and even when you think you've conquered a section, this game loves going nope and tossing you right back into something fiendish. Compared to HROT's first 2 episodes, episode 3 feels more inventive and playful, doubling down on silliness and unique gameplay scenarios. The first level is the best example of this. Our hero takes on an army of violent partying newts. The newts can wield a variety of weapons and will give the player a run for their money. They also spawn from tanks that must be destroyed or else they just keep coming. This is the only level you encounter them, and it makes it feel all the more special. Another level you free some small dogs that will eat the pesky rats for you, which is weirdly adorable. And you can feed them treats too. Just be careful not to give them too many. Another of my favorite sections was a big arena fight within a rail yard, the occasional train speeding through to splatter enemies, or you if you don't pay attention. To me, episode 3 felt like the developer letting their hair down a bit and allowing their creativity to blast through, regardless of how goofy or absurd. And for me, it made for some really enjoyable gameplay, and some of the best moments of the whole game. Also, I'm not gonna spoil it, but the apex of HROT's humor and inventiveness comes with the final boss, which was something else. I was confused, laughing, and loving it, and I think it will be a source of catharsis for many, many people. HROT is one of the best throwback, old school, retro, boomer, whatever you want to call it, shooters out there, proudly sitting besides the best of them. It absolutely has its flaws, but its positive qualities makes them easy to forget. It is a must-buy for shooter fans, especially those who love political and historical satire. From here, I'm crossing my fingers it gets a console release so more people can enjoy it, and I am certainly looking forward to what the developer does next. That's it for me. What are your thoughts on HROT? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. And be sure to check out my previous HROT videos linked in the description. If you dug the video, please be sure to subscribe, like, share, and smack that bell. If you want to come say hi, my Discord is linked below, along with my affiliate links. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.